If you're looking for assisted living level of care for your aging loved one, there are so many things that you want to ask or know when you're vetting potential places, but oftentimes I think that it's incredibly overwhelming, and you may get to a facility, it looks really nice, and you're like, okay, what else is there to ask? There are several categories of questions that I think are really important to ask potential facilities, but the very top of the line, in my opinion, is what type of care is your loved one going to receive? I think if you ask facilities by and large, what's the type of care that my loved one can expect to receive here, they're going to give you a really kind of stock cookie cutter answer, and you're not going to get to the true nitty gritty of what your loved one can actually expect unless you ask certain questions. And if you've been in the field like I have for a long time, I think you know what questions need to be asked. But since you're here on my channel, I'm going to provide you with a list of things that I think are the most important questions to ask to find if this type of care is really what's going to be right for you or your loved one. And there's 4 questions I want you to ask any potential facility that I think is going to get you the answers that you need. The very first question that we're going to ask is, what is your staffing ratio? And what this is, if you've not worked in healthcare, is the amount of residents to the amount of staff. And within assisted livings, by and large, you're going to be receiving care from a CNA, and this is a certified nursing assistant. There's generally not nursing or physician staff on site at assisted livings, and they oftentimes can be managed or owned by people who are not actually a nurse or a doctor, but probably have been working either in the field or have had a loved one that has been placed in one of these facilities before and started their practice because of that. So the ratio that you're looking for, I personally feel like a 1-to-5 ratio is pretty good. That means you're going to have 1 staff member for every 5 residents at the facility. Anything higher than that, your loved one is probably not going to get as many eyes on them throughout the day, and their care may get delayed throughout the day because there's just more people that everyone has to serve within the home. The next question, number 2, that I want you to inquire about is, what is the length of service of your longest versus your shortest tenured employee? And this is a big one. I think that most people know this in any type of job setting, that your happy employees tend to stay the longest, and generally happy employees tend to perform better. So you really want your staff at the assisted living to be happy, well cared for folks, so that they do a really good job caring for your loved one, because your loved one's the most important person to you, and you want to make sure that they're receiving high quality care. Usually staff who are treated well, they tend to have better vacation, better pay, and their opinions are respected and their expertise is respected as well. So if a facility can maintain their employees for 10+ years, that is a really good sign that you have found yourself a good facility. And that's not to say that new employees are bad, because we all need new employees at some point in time, but you do want to look for a facility that has some tenured employees on staff. At least, 1/3 to 2/3. You want one that's going to have longer tenured employees. The next question I want you to ask is, how many total residents do you serve at this facility? Here's why this matters. Say you're going with a local mom and pop establishment, they have 5 total clients. Your folks are going to get seen a lot more quickly in a home setting, because oftentimes those staff are embedded within the location. These facilities are usually houses, and so the staff are within the house with them all throughout the day. The care is 24/7, so their staff are going to be there all throughout the day. They're going to be hanging out with your loved ones. They're going to be playing games. They're going to be making the food for them, helping them with all of their activities of daily living. They're going to be seeing them and talking with them all throughout the day. So if a care need arises, they're going to be able to see it quickly and tend to that very quickly without a whole lot of lag time, unless they're in the midst of something with someone else. And then there might be some wait. If you're working with what I call a big box facility, the ones that look really shiny, they're, condo situations or private apartments, they're really big, they have a lot of amenities, it looks really great. However, a lot of these facilities are going to be multi-bed, so they're going to have 50, 100, 150 folks that are in their assisted living at any given time. And what they're going to do is employ CNAs to come in for any given shift. Usually the CNAs are going to get somewhere between 10 and 25 clients on their caseload, depending on, staffing and just what in general that facility does. And so they're going to get their list at the beginning of the day of who they need to provide care for, and they're going to go room to room to room. And then if your loved one wants to engage in care, care, they'll do that and then move on to the next person. What this can end up looking like is that your loved one may only get care once per shift, depending on the needs of everyone throughout the course of the day and how quickly they're able to get to all of the people that are on their roster for that day. So it may seem that the place with all the bells and whistles and all of the amenities is, the best option. However, you may really want to consider a local mom and pop institution because your loved one may actually get better care, quicker care, and more frequent care, which can really matter, especially when we're talking about folks with continence issues, because as you know, the longer that you sit in urine or feces, the more skin breakdown can happen. So that type of thing, it's really important for the folks to be able to get changed quickly, and if they aren't able to do that, that's something that's of key importance if your loved one is in that situation. And the last question that you want to ask about is, what is your emergency management system? So there's going to be different systems in place for different emergencies. There's environmental emergencies like fire, floods, things like that. They are going to have a second location. It is a requirement for licensing. So there's always going to be a second location that the assisted living will tell you, if something like that happens, we're going to evacuate to this location. You want to know where that is and what it is. Is it a hotel? Is it another house owned by you? What does that look like? And then if there is an emergency that's a medical emergency, how do you handle that within the home? How early do you call 911? What is the threshold, for calling 911? Do you have your own internal physician that comes in to see my loved one and make that assessment? Do you have a nurse that's going to come in and assess them? And how quickly am I as the loved one going to get called and notified, that there's been an emergency and we need to take some sort of action? So those are the top 4 questions that I think will get you to the bottom of what type of care your loved one is going to actually receive in any facility that you're looking at, and the things that are incredibly important to suss out. If you have questions about any of these questions specifically or any of my advice, drop me a comment below.